Welcome. This is the MenChurch Stuff Podcast. This is the show where brothers-in-law DJ Culp and Brad Coleman talk about stuff from our perspective as men. It's a show for anyone who wants to hear how Christians interact with the world. And don't worry, we're real. We've grown up in church, and we want to share our experiences with you. We're going to talk about life stuff, church stuff, we'll talk man stuff, and stuff. The show starts now. Greetings, listeners here and there and everywhere, all across the land. This is the MenChurch Stuff Podcast. I'm one of your hosts, DJ Culp. As always, here with my beloved brother-in-law, Brad Coleman. Brad, happy Tuesday.
Happy Tuesday to you too, DJ.
It is a good Tuesday. It's nice and chilly, nice and cold, brisk, as it were.
Brisk, I don't mind.
Yeah.
Like when I go out and I have to defrost my windshield before I can go anywhere.
That's when you mind?
Yeah, because I wasn't planning on that. My brain never plans on that.
Right.
So it's like, oh.
That's really funny because like how we both grew up, and I'm sure that you grew up like with a lot of actual winters. I mean, where you were, but where I grew up, I mean, come I don't know, November, maybe even sometimes late October, all the way through March. Everybody just knew you gotta scrape the windshield in the morning, and so whenever it gets really cold, it's weird that I'm still conditioned to know I need to go out, crank the car, crank the truck, and get the windshield thawed before I do anything. So 5-10 minutes before we leave the house, I'll go out and do that.
If you remember in enough time, you can just crank the car and put the heat on.
But you don't. Yeah, right.
Yeah. But if you come out like as you need to leave, and now it's like, oh, poo.
Yeah. Yeah.
I can't see through that wall of glass.
No. Now here's where, and I haven't had any issues in the truck with this, but I would have issues with my previous vehicle, my Equinox. I'd start it in enough time, and the frost would be thawed, but what would not be clear is the fog on the inside of my windshield. And if there's actually anything that annoys me more than like anything on the outside of my car, it's that. The frost on the the fog on the inside of the windshield, I would have the hardest time clearing. Yeah. And where we live, I don't know if you know this, but when you pull out of our driveway and like start to head toward the main road, early in the morning, like you're actually staring face to face with the sun. And so if that fog isn't gone, you can't see anything. Like the entire windshield just lights up.
What gets me with that fog on the windshield is it can't decide whether it wants hot or cold to fix it sometimes. No. It's like, okay, I'll throw heat at you. Oh, no, it's just going to make me worse.
Yeah, I know.
Okay, well, so I got it. I'll throw cool at you next time.
Well, no, it's going to make me worse.
No, actually, that's going to make me worse. Like, what do you want? What do you want?
So I'm guessing you guys probably deal with that up in St. Louis like we do down here in Tennessee, that when the weather is sick, so mid-fall, early spring, when it doesn't really know what's going on, it just kind of needs to throw up before it feels better. Mm-hmm. And that you get that really sort of eerie, not right kind of a feeling, humidity. Like you walk outside and it's like, okay, something's wrong. Something's very wrong here. It's that kind of weather that my windshields will do that. And you're right. I don't know how to fix it. And it's like if I crank the heat up and try to like almost smoke us out of the car, it still doesn't work. Yeah. I hate that.
Well, we don't have the ability to control the weather. Although I did see this little cartoon. It was like a 3-panel with Jesus in the boat, and it was like this big mean looking wave. And the apostles are like, Jesus, this what the water's gonna kill us. And then Jesus wakes up and he's like, no, it's not. It's gonna calm down and let me take my nap. And then like the mean look goes off of it, and it gets like a kind of more settled look. And then in the third one, it's hiding down, and you just see like it back in the water, like, my bad.
My bad. I'm sorry. That's funny.
And rebuke the fog on your window.
I've never thought about
rebuke you in the name of Jesus.
In the name of Jesus.
Fog.
I have my mustard seed sized faith says, "Be gone, fog. Be gone."
Throw a mustard seed at it.
I would love to see if that even
I'm gonna start carrying mustard seeds around. As a pastor, I shouldn't I? I should have
just throw it at people.
I should have just like a small container full of mustard. It wouldn't take up that much room, in my pocket, and just hand people a mustard seed. She's like, what is this? It's just a reminder.
And if you need to be really aggressive with it, carry like a pistol BB gun. Just load it down with mustard seed.
Can anybody 3D print that for me?
Size.
Can anybody 3D print a mustard seed? Just little snap. It doesn't need to go couldn't go very fast. Just enough
to kind of pelt them. Ow, ooh, thank you. Yes, Brad. Let's continue our conversation from last week. So, listeners, if you tuned in last week, you'll know that we described, to the best of our abilities, what are our ideas of what a spiritual healthy man is, and if you don't know what I'm talking about, you can listen to last week's episode. But today we're gonna just kind of pull this back up. We're gonna dive into if there is in fact a correlation between spiritual healthy churches and spiritual healthy men. And what really acts as the springboard to this conversation is, I heard this at some point in time, that the health of the church is tied very deeply to the health of the men. And what Brad and I did was we kind of just to narrow the focus of our conversation, we added the caveats that the spiritual health of the church is tied very deeply to the spiritual health of the men in the church. So, Brad, I want to start out just kind of like with a general conversation. I don't want to say, do you agree with that? Because that's a yes/no question, and the conversation's over in 2 seconds.
Right,
whether your answer is yes or no, it's just
see you guys next time.
Yeah, Brad agrees. Bye. So let's start here, Brad. When you think about the phrase, the spiritual health of the church is tied very deeply to the spiritual health of the men in the church, I am going to ask, do you agree with that? But do you see that there is as strong of a correlation as that phrase suggests?
So yes, I would agree with it, but I would also not downsize the fact that the spiritual health of the women in the church is also very important. Just like in a marriage, if you have a spiritually healthy, mature husband and a not spiritually healthy wife, it's going to affect the marriage, and vice versa. If you have a not spiritually, I think you got to look at statistics too, though. They've done the statistics, and if a child starts going to church, and I'm making these up close as I can remember, but it's like, it's like 10% or something that the whole family will go to church. If the wife or mother starts going to church, it becomes more like 30%.
I was thinking between 30 and 40. I'm pretty sure that it's under 50. Yeah.
But if the father starts going to church, it then becomes like upwards of like 75+%.
And in my head, you're right. I don't know exactly what the stats are, but Brad, my memory serves me. If my memory serves me correct, it's over 90%.
Yeah,
actually.
I'm hugging low. I'm hugging low because I don't want.
Yeah, right. Yeah, just to give myself cushion.
But the point is, and again, God has called us as men to be the spiritual leaders in our home. And again, and let me reiterate, that is about special responsibility, not special privilege. He hasn't called us to be just the boss in our home and boss everybody around. He's called us to lead, and there's a difference. And look at Jesus. Yeah. Jesus tells his apostles what to do. He gives them commands, but he leads. See what you saw me do? Do that. Hey, you see what you saw me do? Do that. See how I loved everybody? Do that.
Right.
See how I washed everybody's feet? Wash each other's feet.
And if I can interject here, Brad, just as because I love this quote, but it every single time that I come back to it, it seems like the author of it, his name's Comenius, John Amos Comenius. He it's got to be spiritually inspired that it is sheer cruelty to ask anyone to do something if they are ignorant of what your wishes are. And that has nothing, like, I think that definitely, I'm going to talk now. I think it has a little bit to do with the way you explain something, but I think it has far more to do with whether or not you're able to demonstrate it. Mm-hmm. So yeah, well, you're exactly right. Yeah, Jesus showed, he didn't just talk.
Right. Well, in education, right? And you know this, mm-hmm. you're a professor. You tell them what they're going to do. You show them what they're going to do. You kind of do it with them, mm-hmm. and then you push them out to pasture to do it themselves.
That's exactly right. Yeah. So if I can, I kind of want to run with this, not because it's my area, but I think there's a lot of this second category of modeling that we don't actually take into consideration enough. So providing a model, and listeners, I'm going to put on my education hat here, but providing a model simply means that you are demonstrating what it is, like what the task that needs to be done, what it looks like, how it needs to be done. And oftentimes what we see in our experience through life is like an A-B situation. So by A, meaning I'm asking somebody to do something. So I'm using my mouth, I'm providing the instruction, and then it's up to you to figure out what to do. The B scenario is I show you what to do, and then I move to A and ask you to do it. So there's this A-B, but there's actually, in my own particular, I'm getting dorky here, Brad, but in my actually own particular research and interests, I have found that there is a really, really large and very valid category where lots and lots of learning and understanding and problem solving and like working out the kinks exists. And it's this third category of modeling that's actually called coach modeling. And the coach model, Brad, is where you model it with your student, you or your child, or like, take a discipleship framework, rather than me saying, Brad, you and I have been meeting for a long time and I've seen you do this. So here's what I think you need to change. Rather than just say that, right? That's kind of the A-B scenario. You and I have been meeting for a long time. I've noticed this. Why don't you and I do this together? Because let me show you how God has helped me work through this. And so like you and I are completing whatever it is in tandem, but I'm providing the model that I'm asking you to follow. I really do think that there's a large discrepancy that we don't take advantage of in the church.
Well, I mean, because it's more fluid that way. The correction's more fluid. It's more personal. I'm thinking like last night. So again, for Christmas, Isaiah and I got our joint gift of a foundry. We've been melting aluminum and some copper brass on occasion. So last night I went out there and was by myself, and then here he comes, joins me, which is a treat, because I'm definitely more focused on it right now than he is. But he comes out there and he's starting to do some things that I had been doing that he hadn't done yet. Right? He's poured, and I was like, all right. I was like, oh, well, you want to get the dross off with the dross spoon that we've got? And he was like, yeah, I haven't done that before. And I hadn't realized, because I'm just focused on not melting something I shouldn't melt, like my face or his face, because we're I mean, aluminum melts we're talking over 1,000 degrees here. This is really hot stuff we're messing with. I mean, this graphite,
I didn't realize that. I was thinking that aluminum was a softer metal that was really easy to melt. I didn't know that.
Well, it is, but I mean, but you're talking about still, like, it's up there, man. Wow. It's not lead. I mean, lead and like that. Yeah, you can melt lead with your torch. Anyway, it's hot. So, he's starting to, scoop it out, and I'm telling him, okay, make sure you do this, which I've just done, but we're doing it together. right? So I'm handing him the thing to do it. And so I'm not just standing on the sidelines going, all right, do this. I'm right there, hands on, going, like this here. Make sure when
and
you
that's
put it over here, and he went to like, because we have a little metal bowl that has water in it. So because the dross is super hot, you don't want to throw it down just anywhere, but you don't want to get the spoon wet because aluminum and water don't mix well, I'm told. And so, he's doing that and he's going real close. I was like, hey, don't get the spoon wet because you got more dross, and so we're having that conversation, but it's correction in real time as we're doing it together, and he's doing it.
That is absolutely a coach model. So kind of bringing it back to the statement of the spiritual health of the church is tied very deeply to the spiritual health of the men in the church. I definitely want to reaffirm, Brad, what you said is that I do not think that is the best if then statement, because that does subtract any it subtracts any what's the word I'm trying to think of?
Women?
It subtracts their maturity out of the equation entirely. Yeah. So what it basically is saying is that no matter how mature or immature your women are, they don't provide any factor, which is completely ludicrous. So I do want to reaffirm ludicrous. That. Yeah. But I think that we're kind of onto something, that there may be this third category of what would cause the spiritual health of the church to be tied very deeply to the spiritual health of the men in the church. Because I think quite often, and we've said this a ton on the show, listeners, if you're new to the show, this is episode 123. We have said this a ton in our show, and I stand by it, that far too often our churches, our church culture kind of teaches us that if we don't have it all together, then that's fine. But let the pastor or let the leaders of the church kind of give us the direction, and you don't really have to worry about much else. And if that is in fact true, then only if the leaders of our church decide, okay, well, I'm going to walk alongside you. I'm not just going to preach the gospel. I'm not just going to talk about the gospel. Only if they give the option, or they take the option to provide this particular coach model, will we receive one. And I think that is an enormous disservice to what Jesus is in fact intending in Scripture. He doesn't there's nothing that I've ever read in Scripture that provides a good argument for this dichotomy of everybody who is the sheep in the pasture. You just be a sheep. You don't need to worry about it. You're just a sheep. Enjoy it. Let the shepherd take all the responsibility. Let the shepherd provide everything that you need. And so, I do. I think, just kind of wrap back around, I think that we're onto something, that there is a third category that will help. So let me ask you this, Brad, regarding the spiritual health of the church being tied very deeply to the spiritual health of the men in the church. How have you seen that play out in a we'll say in a positive correlation? Right. So there, like you have either experienced firsthand, or you have seen, meaning you have been a part of a church directly, or you have seen firsthand how that particular statement has reigned true. Do you have any experience with that?
Yeah. I think I grew up with a father who was not a pastor. He was a deacon, in the model, of the church, that the deacons were kind of they were, along with the pastor and deacons, were the elders, and they didn't really call them elders, but they kind of do that. And so to see, one, they were leading by example. They were taking care of things. They were dealing with issues that came up, but they were also just, I think when you have that leadership of men in the church that are active, they're fat, as we talked about last time. They're faithful, they're available, fat and they're teachable. right?
Yeah.
They're continuing, they're continuing to grow in grace. They're seeking, out to live closer to Christ as they walk, as they're being sanctified. And then they're leading others to do that. They're taking others under their wing in discipleship. Now, I think one of the things that I saw growing up in kind of this country church was it didn't always look like a program. Like discipleship wasn't always like, hey, let's go through this book together. Hey, let's do this program together. It was hey, I'm going visiting. You want to go with me? Hey, I'm going to go see so and so in the hospital.
Right.
Won't you? And that's the way my dad discipled me. Was he would, I'm 15 years old, young Christian, and he'd go, hey, I'm going to go to the hospital and visit so and so. Won't you go with me?
Yeah. Now, Dad would do that with us. And every now and then he wouldn't do it. He wouldn't do it all the time, but every now and then he'd say, DJ, I want you to come with me. Or Tabitha would go with him. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Brad, the word that I want to throw out there, because I love being able to coin something very, very deliberate and specific to an idea, just to kind of help me figure out what we're talking about. But the word that popped into my mind immediately when you said it didn't really look like a program is the word control. Not control of like I have control of it, but it is controlled. So, all right. So Brad, you and I are going to have a discipleship meeting. We got about an hour. All right. So let's sit down and let's just start. Like, that's not really organic. That right. Doesn't really, we might glean things out of it, but it's not really going to, it's not this natural outgrowth of love for one another. And so that's why I say the word that I would coin to that is that it's very controlled. And I think that there are times for that maybe. But it needs to be I watch you do this because it's what you do.
And I think it works. So, and I could be wrong about this. So guys, people, don't crucify me. But in my experience and looking, right, I think a lot of times, sometimes those meetings up and let's meet and let's talk about it are good. Mm-hmm. But I think sometimes those are a lot more effective for the women, for them, because they're more of let's talk about it. How did it make you feel? Yeah. All of this stuff.
I would agree to that. Absolutely.
I think I've had some of my best conversations with guys working on a car or fishing. When we're doing something else, we're focused on something else. And those guys, and myself included, I think are far more like open to talk about those things while I'm doing something else than to just sit across a table. And then now I feel like, it kind of takes some of the nerve wracking like stuff out of it, and we can talk as we go. Right. Like, so there can be a big gap. I can think, to get a bite.
Yeah. This is an area that I think will happen until Christ comes back. And for all I know, because this is the way that God wired us, it may even carry over into our heavenly experiences. But, guys are able to really open up easier if we're doing something. Mm-hmm. That doesn't mean that Brad, you and I wouldn't have a deep conversation over a cup of coffee.
Right. No, and or plenty of deep conversations. Over that and sitting in those and like that. Because, not everybody is into fishing or working on cars.
Right. But for me and Dad, when you said what you did, I immediately had a memory revisit that I hadn't had in a long time. Dad and I would oftentimes begin to talk about just kind of the deeper things of life, playing ping pong. That was our thing. And I loved playing ping pong with Dad. We would do the same thing fishing, but like fishing, it's kind of more of an ordeal to get up and get everything ready to go fishing versus, hey Dad, can we go play some ping pong for 30 minutes, But with me and Noah, and I don't mean to kind of steer the conversation away, but for me and Noah, we're already experiencing some of that, me and him, when we're outside playing catch with a baseball, with a frisbee, with a football, doing something like that. So yeah, coming back to how have you seen it play out? Um, I have, I have seen churches show their health more. How do I say it right? I think that a church shows a lot of potential for health if the leadership is healthy. I have seen evidence of health. Yeah, it is, but I have seen evidence of health if it in fact transfers into the church body. And because like if a church has, let's just say, great preaching, and the music's just meh, the church is still going to have a decent reputation. And this is my experience with it. Church is still going to have a decent reputation because, you know, said pastor who's the leader of the church has the reputation for being a good preacher. I have seen it less so vice versa, but there's always kind of this extra sort of like X factor in conversation of, so have you heard what's going on over there at that church? God is doing a work there. And that to me, that kind of language to me means that it's not just the leadership that's healthy, but the church is healthy, right? The church is healthy, and more times than not, and I'm sorry, listeners, if this does strike a chord, my apologies, but more times than not, I have heard of those particular situations showing themselves because male leadership is at the helm. And I think personally, Brad, I don't know about you, I'd like to hear you on this, but personally, I have far more often heard that women are active in churches, even if they don't have necessarily the largest reputation for being a healthy church. Does that make sense? That kind of, no matter the health of the church, women are typically active. They typically have things going on. Where are you on that?
Well, I don't, I guess my struggle is the relevance. Maybe when you say active, you may have to mesh that out a little bit more.
Sure.
Because my brain's like,
so,
well, yeah, if they're there, they're doing something.
If they're there, they're doing
you're
something.
Saying positively active? Are you saying negative active? Or are you just...
Oh, no, yeah, okay. Yeah, good call. I'm saying like women, say, let's take women's ministry, WMU, Women on a Mission, or, you know, whatever the case is, they've got something going on. They are usually active. They're usually trying to keep church momentum going, whether the church is healthy or whether the church overall is unhealthy. And I want to come back to, I am not suggesting that a church that has healthy women leadership can be healthy without healthy male leadership, and vice versa.
I think women tend to be more understanding of their need for community than men, and we need community. We all need community.
Yes, good call. Thank you.
So I think women tend to seek that out more than men, even though one could argue we all need it just as much. And I think sometimes that's cultural, you know, and sometimes it is the way we're wired. But, you know, more often than not, you will see if someone's trying to be a lone wolf, it's a guy, right? There's a guy trying to be a lone wolf. And God didn't call us to be lone wolves. I want to get back to something, though, circle back around before I forget. When you said, because you said something that kind of strikes a little bit of nerve with me, and from a pastor, and right, you said if a guy is a good preacher, there are guys that are good preachers by our standards that are horrible human beings. They're good preachers. Man, they can preach a message. You want to listen to it, you'll hear amens. But their life does not represent the gospel of Christ.
I completely
and maybe
agree.
It did, and maybe it got off or whatever. And I think the health of the church, then, like, I will take a guy, again, earthly standards. I'll take a guy who's a mediocre preacher, who's living a godly life over a man who can draw a crowd because he's got a voice and he's got a way of talking and he says all the right things, but he's cheating on his wife. His kids are like he's horrible to his kids. He's arrogant. That man's doing more for Satan than he is Jesus. And right. That's what I see so much, is that we put so much emphasis on how good of an orator the pastor is or isn't. Anytime somebody new, I've had this conversation so many times, and I will keep having this conversation with people. As a pastor, I will get men who are called to preach, right, who have never preached before or have not preached very often, and I will have them preach on a Sunday. And without fail, there will usually be at least one person that will make some statement like this to me at some point. Can you just let me know when such and such is going to be preaching next? Because I'm not going to come, or I'm going to go somewhere else when they do that, because, I just don't like the way they preach. And I was like, okay, no, I'm not going to do that. One, that's not good. I'm usually up front with that. I'm not going to let you know the next time they're preaching so that you can not come or do something else. And,
right. Yeah.
But two, I always say, what was your problem with the way they were preaching? Well, it was just, it was slow, it's boring, it was very hard for me to keep attention. Okay, what was your problem scripturally with what they were preaching? Because here is the thing. If that person got up and they preached God's word and they did it in a way that was accurate, true to God's word, then that's what I'm looking for. You can learn how to be a better speaker. I hope that I'm continuing to learn how to be a better speaker. Sometimes people say to me like, oh, that was a great sermon. Oh, you're always getting better. I hope what they're saying, or I think what they're saying to me is, hey, you're becoming better at speaking. And I'm an old hillbilly from Eastern Kentucky, so I'll take that.
What Brad is saying here, listeners, is that there's a ceiling that he will eventually that he will reach.
I think it's getting pretty crowded up there right now. You're probably not going to see tens of thousands of people come to listen to Brad Coleman say anything. And if they do, it's probably not going to be a good thing. Probably because I made a fool of myself. Oh, yeah, no, we got to go in and listen to this guy. He's an idiot. But so, again, I think we've got to be careful that we don't look at Laodiceas and call them healthy churches. Right? And so in Revelation, Laodicea.
So, yeah. Go ahead, Brad.
Jesus sends a message and says, hey, you think that you're rich, but you're poor and you're blind and you're naked. And Laodicea probably thought they were on fire. We got money, we got people, we got programs, we got a rock star who's he's nice to listen to.
Let's kind of dive into this idea here, because I think that, and I do still stand, even though it struck a nerve with you, I still stand by the fact that the way that our church world works, the way that just humans use sort of the idea of energy and synergy from other people, hearing other people talk about this or that. When we consider the spiritual health of the church is tied very deeply to the spiritual health of the men in the church, I do like how the fact that particular statement does not only isolate the idea of the pastor being at the helm. Granted, the pastor is at the helm. I don't want the conversation to go in. You start talking about I'm not going to use the word hierarchy, but the tiered leadership of the church. But the idea that, and this comes back to what I said, like whenever you hear somebody talk about a church that is healthy, there's an X factor that you can clearly hear in what they're saying about the church. I have heard a lot in my day, they've got a great pastor over there. He's doing great things. I have also heard less often that church is a solid church. Like God is doing a work in that church. The reason I say there's an X factor is that when I hear that, and maybe this is an assumption on my part, Brad, but when I hear that there is a church that is experiencing what God is doing, I assume that the pastor, the leadership of the pastor and the pastoral staff is lumped into that. If I hear, I know, right? It's almost counterintuitive. So, all right, let's do this. Should we? Let's kind of shift our gears here. Should we try to put more emphasis then on male leadership, or let bygones be bygones?
So, and I think you and I have talked about this, but I don't think we've talked about it like on the podcast.
Right.
There's definitely room when you look at the way God does things in the New Testament, and in the Old Testament too. There's a place for women leadership. But we cannot ignore the fact when God called his apostles, he called 12 guys, and one of them was a snake. But he knew that from the beginning too. And but so we're not downsizing Mary and Martha. We're not downsizing Mary Magdalene, Mary the mother of Jesus, and they're instrumental in the church. But when God called the leadership that would lead the church, the first generation church, he called Matthew, he called Peter,
right?
And he called these guys. So I think we can't downsize that. Now, if men are leading and they're leading well, then I think other healthy men and women will follow. And really, a good leader in the church is a follower. Right? It's my job first and foremost to be obedient. Yeah. Well, and to be obedient to Jesus, to be following him, to be saying, like, be acknowledging that he's not just my Savior, he's my Lord. Right? Like, this is not my church. This is your church. Right. You know, this is, I'm not even the shepherd per se, as much as I'm an under shepherd, like, because he's the chief shepherd. Right. You know, he's the boss. He's the leader. He's the king. I'm not vying for that position. The guy who was vying for that position, you know, got kicked out of heaven because he was trying to be king. When there's already king. It's, you know, for me, I've got to follow. I've got to be obedient. I've got to realize that my flesh is going to get in the way. So I've got to, as Paul said, die daily. I've got to die to myself. I've got to die to those things. I've got to die to Brad's ideas and Brad's wants and Brad's, you know, oh, this is going to be great. When God says no. And then I'm modeling that. A healthy church, there's the requirement of a healthy pastor. But now if they're healthy church members and healthy men who are involved and the health of their pastor is waning, healthy, godly, spiritually mature men don't sit around and do nothing.
That's exactly right. Yes. And let's come back to coach modeling, because I think part of a coach model and in the, you know, with you talking about your, you know, doing your metallurgy with Isaiah, it's almost like coach model can kind of be even thought about as like an apprenticeship. But if the church leadership or vice versa is waning, then you are exactly right. And I don't think that godly, healthy, spiritual men will allow that to happen. And now I'm not talking about church discipline. I'm not talking about like a political move, if you will. I think a lot of people might see like the deacon board calling for the pastor's resignation. I think
and that's not.
And now hang on. I don't want to open up Pandora's box. Whenever I'm just trying to outline the kind of move that I'm talking about. That the idea that spiritual healthy men are going to come alongside the pastor. Yeah, they're going to admonish the crap out of him, or hopefully the pastor would do the same. But
iron sharpens iron. Yeah.
Iron sharpens iron. That's exactly right. And the only way for that to happen is for, I got to figure out how to word it. It's for spiritual healthy men to have already established the relationship of of reliability, of showing themselves as godly men, as showing themselves as servants to the church, as leaders in their homes, and then the list goes on. Because I think it's almost viewed as a political move for, well, said person did this, and well, we're just not going to do that around here. So out you go. I mean, there's not.
What
there's
I want
not
to say
any,
is you are mixing church discipline with that. That's not church discipline. Church discipline is when we're biblically looking at the way God says that we're to do things. If a leader falls, how do we deal with that? What do we do? How do we approach that? How do we go to them? How do we go to a brother and say, you need to repent? When do we get the entire church involved? That's church discipline. Now, part of the problem I think we have as this generation of where we are in the church, especially in America, so English speaking in America, is we have not realized that punishment and discipline aren't the same word.
That is very true.
And until we do, we're not going to get church discipline right. It ain't a church beating. I like what Jeff Woolham said. He said, if it comes to church discipline that has to become and done before the entire church body, he said there should not be a dry eye in the place, because it ought to break everybody's heart that it's come to that. And if it's come to, hey, we've got to separate this, we've got to make this hard stand because that's what God has called us to do. But what I see far too often, DJ, and you probably reflect this too, is right, I don't like the way you're doing things because it doesn't mesh with me. Not whether or not it meshes with God, but it doesn't mesh with me and my people and my desires. So we're going to try to get rid of you as a pastor. Or because we have the power to do so, we are going to get rid of you as a pastor. But also what I see far too often is the opposite, which is, which is pastor who needs to be going through some kind of church discipline or needs to be asked to step down, who in fact is just continued to allowed to do that because, well, we can't lose him as a speaker, or we love him too much, or all this, and you're not doing him any favors either.
And Brad, I want to add to this I want to add to this conversation. Right now we're talking about like a top up or a bottom up or a top down scenario. But what about a lateral shift, right? So the lateral meaning church congregant to church congregant, or church leader to church leader. Like the health of the church needs to, I'm not going to say I think regulated is a good word. It needs to be regulated by spiritual healthy men, because no, I'm not going to be apologetic, because it's just the way God wired us. I think it's one thing for a woman to come up, and we've talked about this on the show, and advocate for something. If a man advocates for it, there is just something that's natural that occurs where it is received with a maybe like maybe more an intentionality. I don't know what the word is, and I'm not trying to get myself in trouble. But if there's a lateral shift, coming back to what we were talking about, if there's a lateral shift of church congregant to church congregant, I don't like what you're doing. I just don't like you. And I think, like, I'm going to stir the pot, and I'm going to try to just kind of push you out, or I'm going to give you the cold shoulder. I've got enough of a posse and entourage that they're going to follow me. And church leadership can potentially do the exact same thing. I definitely think that those are areas where spiritual healthy men, and I'm hopefully not one of the people that I'm about to talk about, but they just have to swallow the pill that's really hard to swallow and do it. And the reason I say I hope I'm not one is I hope that I wouldn't second guess the role that God has put me in to do whatever needs to be done. Because I think apathy, it's really, really easy to walk in and say, you know what? I'm going to let bygones be bygones. Let's just I don't want to stir the pot. I don't want to make things worse. I could potentially make things worse. Do I really want to be that guy? Yeah. And the whole gamut of excuses and the whole gamut of soft outs comes into play. Well, Brad, I think we're probably there, because I've got a couple other questions that I've got written, but let's just kind of table those, because we're at around 50 minutes, and I think that's a good solid ep. Do you have any other thoughts that you want to offer up to the listeners?
I think I've shared mine passionately.
I really do like this statement: spiritual health of the church is tied very deeply to spiritual health of the men in the church, because it gives us more responsibility of the church's health than I think men actually want. And I understand that that's kind of an extreme statement, specifically to say at the end of the show, but in my experience, and sometimes in my own life, I have seen far too often guys just simply be okay that things are okay, when in actuality they're not okay.
Yeah.
But like,
I think a lot of times they're not okay with it. They're just not going to do anything about it.
They're just not going to do well. So you say that they're not okay with it, but somebody ought to. Yeah, that's right. Somebody ought to. And in my personal opinion, if either I or anybody else stands in the placeholder of, well, somebody ought to do that and nothing's going to get done, but still somebody ought to do that, then I think that means that you really don't care. I'm sorry if that's super extreme. I'm sorry if I'm being overly, I don't know if dogmatic's the word. Maybe I don't know, but like, maybe not dogmatic, but it's if we are not willing to get it done, I really think that there's an element of us not caring. And so, yeah, the spiritual health of the church is tied very deeply to spiritual health of the men in the church. Brad, as a pastor, you can only do so much. Yep. You can preach the gospel till you're blue in the face, as the old adage goes. But like, if you can tell that a horse is thirsty, you're not going to make it drink. And so that's why I say I think there's a lot of truth in the statement, because it does give a lot of responsibility to the men, even if we don't want it. Mm-hmm. And I want to say this as kind of a ending on a happy note, rather than kind of like an admonishment. I am so grateful that God wired women the way he did, because I have seen in my own life that when men just kind of crap out and they're just sitting around thinking, whatever, women keep the engine going.
It's not good for us to be alone.
It's not good for us to be alone. You're so right. And when women refuse to let things die, in this sense, not as a comedian might lay out, but in this sense, it is such a blessing for the church to still see. Like, I have watched women that have kept things going reinvigorate guys. I've actually been a part of some conversations. I don't know, this was 6-7 years ago, 5, 6, something like that, where basically the tone of the conversation was, dude, the women have got it going on. Men, we need to freaking step up, because the momentum that the women want is not happening because we're not doing it yet. So, all right, listeners, you know what to do. Follow us on our Facebook group, Instagram page, buy our merch, adopt and give our merchandise loving homes. Yeah, comment, rate, and review our show. Wherever you get your podcasts, give us a 5-star rating. Let listeners know that our show is out there and doing stuff. Yeah, beyond that, Brad, I love you, buddy.
Love you too.
Listeners, we love you, and we will catch you next time.
Go be his church.